Russia warns that a conflict scenario with France is getting closer and closer. U.S. Senator reveals Washington's secrets about the war in Ukraine. The Italian Prime Minister announced that the G7 will mortgage profits from Russian assets to support Ukraine. President Biden affirmed that he will not commute his son's sentence. Russia warns that a conflict scenario with France is getting closer and closer. Russia warns that France is becoming more and more involved in the Ukraine conflict, making the possibility of a direct conflict with Moscow increasingly closer. France is becoming more and more involved in the armed conflict in Ukraine, constantly switching from a supportive stance to weakening the situation. And certainly, this will increase the possibility of a direct conflict with our side is getting closer. This causes many unpredictable consequences for security not only in Europe but around the world, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova announced on June 13. Paris's attempts to justify its reckless actions, to present things as if they did not lead to a further escalation of the Ukraine crisis, are inappropriate. Of course, that's what it is they are leading. They are simply fueling the situation on the European continent, Ms. Zakharova added. The above warning was issued in the context that French President Emmanuel Macron voiced his support for allowing Ukraine to use weapons donated by the West to attack military targets on Russian territory. At the end of February, after a meeting with leaders of about 20 countries, French President Macron said they discussed the scenario of deploying military forces to Ukraine. He said that although consensus has not been reached on this issue, the West has not ruled out any options. In an interview with The Economist on May 2, the French president stated two conditions for sending troops to Ukraine: Kiev's request and Russia's breakthrough on the front line. However, Mr. Macron emphasized that there is currently no such request from Ukraine. At a joint press conference with Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky on June 7, President Macron announced a plan to form an alliance to meet Ukraine's request to train troops on Ukrainian soil. He said that in addition to France, 5 other countries have agreed to send military trainers to Ukraine. Alexei Goncharenko, a Ukrainian parliamentarian, quoted sources on May 31 as saying that the first group of French military trainers is on the way to Ukraine. According to President Macron, France plans to train and equip about 4,500 Ukrainian soldiers. He revealed that France will provide Mirage 2005 fighter jets to Ukraine and provide training support for the country's pilots. France has been one of the countries that has supported Ukraine most strongly since Russia launched a special military campaign in the neighboring country in February 2022. U.S. Senator reveals Washington's secrets about the war in Ukraine. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican, caused a stir when he revealed America's extremely sensitive secrets regarding the war in Ukraine. In a recent interview on CBS's Face the Nation, Mr. Graham argued that Washington should not allow Russia to win the war in Ukraine because of the valuable mineral reserves on Ukrainian territory. From 10 to 12 trillion US dollars. In particular, Graham makes 3 claims. First, Russia's control of this gold mine will enrich Moscow and allow it to share mined minerals with China. Second, Ukraine, if it retains control, could become the richest country in Europe and the best business partner we could ever dream of. And third, the outcome of the war in Ukraine is a very big problem. Indeed, according to Graham, the stakes are so high that America must help Kyiv win a war we cannot lose. There were other prominent statements in that interview, but it was the information mentioned above that attracted the most attention and condemnation. According to analysts, Graham revealed what the Hindustan Times called the real reason why America helped Ukraine. It turned out that the reason was commercial, selfish and strategic. Too much, for all the talk about Kyiv's sovereignty, democracy and freedom. Ukraine, for the U.S., is an asset to be used, and has been used up, in a much larger global geopolitical game, or more accurately, a set of assets, beyond location strategy, important minerals, black soil, and of course, people. Graham also has a record of calling for more military mobilization in Ukraine. He is also famous for commenting in May 2023, in a conversation with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, that Russians are dying in the war, while US aid is the best money we have every detail. In addition, Graham also made a shocking statement that, to make those Russians die, of course, many Ukrainians must also die. And President Zelensky does not seem to be bothered by this statement. The Italian Prime Minister announced that the G7 will mortgage profits from Russian assets to support Ukraine. Leaders of G7 countries agreed on a plan to mortgage profits from frozen Russian assets to borrow $50 billion in aid to Ukraine. I confirm that we have reached an agreement to provide additional financial support estimated at $50 billion to Ukraine this year, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said on June 13. Italy is the country hosting the 50th G7 summit, taking place on June 13 to 15. The remaining 6 member countries include the US, Canada, France, UK, Germany and Japan. The G7 plan is based on profits arising from Russia's frozen assets of more than $300 billion, most of which are in the European Union, EU. They plan to use this profit as collateral and borrow $50 billion to aid Ukraine. Technical details will be finalized in the coming weeks. Speaking at a joint press conference with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky afterward, U.S. President Joe Biden said the agreement emphasized the allies' long-term commitment to Ukraine and showed Russian President Vladimir Putin that he is not can divide us. Moscow once criticized the G7 countries' idea of taking advantage of Russia's frozen assets to support Ukraine and threatened to respond. President Putin in May signed a decree on the process of confiscating frozen U.S. assets in Russia to compensate for damage caused by sanctions from the West. President Biden affirmed that he will not commute his son's sentence. President Joe Biden announced he would not pardon Hunter Biden after his son was convicted of a crime related to gun possession. "I'm satisfied that I will do nothing. I said I would abide by the jury's decision. I will. And I will not pardon my son," President Joe Biden said at a press conference while attending the G7 summit in Italy on June 13. When asked by reporters whether he would commute his son's sentence, Mr. Biden replied, "No." However, President Biden still affirmed his support for his son Hunter Biden. "I am extremely proud of my son Hunter. My son overcame addiction. He is one of the smartest, kindest men I know," Mr. Biden said. Previously, Mr. Biden announced that he would respect the trial process and affirmed that he would not grant amnesty if Hunter Biden's son was convicted of a crime. "Like I said, I'm the president, but I'm also a father. Jill and I love and are proud of our son. Many families who have had loved ones battle addiction understand the feeling. Proud to see someone you love come out the other side and become strong and resilient during the recovery process," Mr. Biden issued a statement on June 11. The White House owner added, "I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process while Hunter will consider an appeal. We will always stand by and support Hunter. Well, nothing can change that."